All 9 Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee calling for Congressman Adam Schiff to resign as chairman of the committee in the wake of the Mueller report. They accused the California Democrat of misleading the public by citing evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, even after the report cleared the president of such a charge. Joining me right now is Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy. He is a former Republican congressman from South Carolina, and he is the former chairman of the House Oversight Committee. He is also a former federal prosecutor. And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, assess that. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? 9 Republicans are asking the chairman to step down. What is your reaction to Adam Schiff's behavior?
Never seen that before. We had a lot of bad days the 8 years I was in Congress, but we never voted to remove or ask a chairperson to step down. Adam is a deeply partisan person. He did everything he could to make sure that Hillary Clinton became the next president, and he's done everything he could since he failed at that to keep a cloud over the Trump presidency. So the folks on the House Intelligence Committee on the Republican side, Maria, are not members of the crazy caucus. They're not bomb throwers. It's Elise Stefanik. It's Will Hurd, who was a CIA employee. It's Johnny Ratcliffe, who was a terrorism prosecutor. It's not part of the crazy caucus. These are reasonable Republicans, all of whom unanimously said, Adam, we've lost confidence in your ability to lead. And I think the next thing that's going to happen is the different intelligence communities, the different intelligence entities are going to say, you know what, Chairman Schiff, if you don't believe the information we provide to you, if you prejudge the outcome of investigations, if you have the President of the United States not just indicted but in jail, and you continue to leak like a screen door on a submarine, we're going to quit giving you information. That's when Pelosi will replace Adam Schiff with someone like Jim Himes, who's every bit as progressive. He's just a lot smarter and a lot more reasonable.
Well, you make a lot of good points, because here's a guy who's running around with his title and spewing out things that are actually coloring people's knowledge of what actually went down. You questioned John Brennan. Same story here. He's a former director of the CIA. So when you hear that title, you see that resume, you stop and you listen. And yet it was back in May of 2017 when you poked holes in his idea that the president had committed treason. He used that word on CNN many times. Here's that exchange between you and Brennan last year.
It's a really simple question. Did evidence exist of collusion, coordination, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors at the time you learned of 2016 efforts?
I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals. And it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. I don't know whether or not such collusion, and that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know. But I know that there was a sufficient basis of information and intelligence that required further investigation by the Bureau to determine whether or not U.S. persons were actively conspiring, colluding with Russian officials.
Sufficient basis? And let me correct myself, that was 2 years ago. 2 years ago you poked holes in this narrative. How did this happen, Congressman? So how do you launch a major investigation into a candidate who's running for president based on no predicate?
Well, let me first note, Maria, that was a Republican asking a question about collusion, because you would never know that if you read the Washington Post and the New York Times. They wanted you to believe that Republicans didn't care about collusion. That was a Republican on national television asking about collusion. It began because of a guy named Peter Strzok with his historic animus towards Trump in July of 2016, launching a counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign. This is about 10 days before he talked about an insurance policy. It was after he said Clinton should win $100 million to nothing. It was after he said Trump would be destabilizing for our country. It was just before he said he had no interest in being part of the special counsel unless it led to impeachment. That's the guy who started the counterintelligence investigation into President Trump. But that's the same investigation that a lot of my Republican colleagues now want you to read the report. It was a flawed ab initio from its inception investigation, and now some of my Republican colleagues want you to read a report on a flawed ab initio investigation.
Trey, you said a minute ago this was based on a faulty investigation from the start. What about the AG releasing the full Mueller report? Where are you on that?
Maria, I bifurcate the investigation and therefore the report. Part of it is what did Russia do in 2016? I am all for my fellow citizens understanding what Russia tried to do to this country. I think it'll be unifying. The other part of the equation is with whom, if anyone, did they do it? And Mueller, Adam and Swalwell and Beto, they all talk about evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what it takes to convict. Mueller didn't even find the lowest level of evidence that anyone in the Trump campaign did it with Russia. There's not even probable cause. So I realize the populist thing to do is say release it all, which, by the way, is against the law. You can't release it all. Let's assume you can just release what you can that's not classified. We are now in the uncharted territory of releasing reports on people for whom there is not even the lowest level of evidentiary standard, not even probable cause. And once you begin to go down that path where you're going to issue reports and do press conferences on people who are not indicted, for whom there's no evidence they committed a crime, then we're in a brand new day politically when the department can do oppo research on a campaign and then under the guise of a report release it but never charge them. I hope we never get to that point, and that's why I'm in a very small minority that doesn't think that part of the report should be made public. I realize I'm in the minority, but I'm not a populist.
Yeah, I noticed that John Ratcliffe took a little walk when the vote came, so he also agrees don't release it because it's not right, and for all the reasons you just mentioned. Look, as I think about this, I feel like this whole thing started by the Clinton machine. Hillary Clinton wanted dirt on Donald Trump. She paid for the dossier. They protected her for her own investigation. It's just extraordinary where we are as we look back. Congressman, it is good to see you this morning. Thank you.
The collusion conspiracy is debunked. Will there be an investigation into why all this nonsense started in the first place? Plus, will the 2020 Democrat hopefuls ever get their act together? Let's talk about all of this with former campaign manager of the Trump 2016 team. Remember that one? Corey Lewandowski. Good evening, Corey.
Great to be with you tonight, Judge.
All right. Now, listen, Corey, we've got these Democrats who are so focused on the president and the Mueller report that they just don't want to give up. And they're going to continue to go after the president, whether it's Jerry Nadler or Adam Schiff. Does this work to their detriment?
It absolutely is going to work to their detriment. And the reason being is they're going to continue to overreach. They're going to continue to press for impeachment. They're going to continue to remind the American people that they are a party that has no ideas. And all this president does is deliver every time. Promises made, promises kept. Look at the economy. Look what he's done for African-American unemployment, for Hispanic unemployment, the lowest numbers ever recorded. Look, I was with the president in Grand Rapids, Michigan on Thursday night. The reception there was the biggest I've seen. 15,000 in the arena, another 10 or 12,000 outside. If that's what the Democrats have to fight against, they have no chance.
Well, there's no question. I mean, you and I, obviously but I've been to several of these events, and the energy is incredible between the president and the audience. I've never seen anything like it. And I think that, in addition to the backfiring of any additional hearings they might have, which can't possibly prove anything more than this long-winded Mueller investigation, I think the fact that they made it all up and that they were so confident, along with the mainstream media, the news cable, all of them, I think that the American public at some point is going to say, we can't believe in them anymore.
You're exactly right, Judge. The biggest losers, in addition to the Democrats, have been the mainstream media, the other networks who perpetrated the story that Trump was going to be taken out in handcuffs, that they said every day he was never going to finish his first term, that Mike Pence was going to have to serve. Look, they have no credibility. It reminds me of the day after the election when Donald Trump dominated over Hillary Clinton. The long faces on the media on May 9th of 2016, of November 9th of 2016, was exactly the equivalent of after the Mueller report came out and Attorney General Barr gave his summary of what was in that. No collusion, No coordination, no obstruction. Very, very clear. The Democrats can't get over it. And the mainstream media cannot understand how wrong they were. And now they're all of a sudden, they're not investigators. Of course they are. They're supposed to be journalists, and they did a disservice to the American people. They can't be trusted.
Well, and I think the American people are going to remember that. But I want to now talk about the 2020 candidates. You know, specifically, I want to talk about one candidate, this guy, Peter Buttigieg, I think. I mean, he's not at the top of the polls, but let's take a listen to what he said last night on Bill Maher.
The paradox here is in order to beat Trump, we got to run a campaign that's not all about Trump. You know, the more it's about him, I think folks at home are going to be saying, okay, who's talking about me?
You know, I don't usually agree after I run a soundbite from Bill Maher, but I got to tell you, why don't some of the front-running Democrats do what this guy is talking about? Because he's right. Whether you've got Warren, Booker, Harris, you know, the whole like of them, all of them, every guy talks about Trump. And then even Biden, who isn't in yet. It's all Trump bashing all day. And yet the American people, I think, have to see something positive going on in their lives. Does this benefit them?
You're exactly right, Judge. And remember, this guy, Pete Buttigieg, he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, a town of about 100,000 people. And all of a sudden, he's starting to resonate, starting to get these crowds because he actually is talking about things other than Donald Trump.
Right.
And what we know is you can't just have a campaign against somebody else. That's what Elizabeth Warren is going to do. Beto O'Rourke, whose real name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, right? All they want to do is bash this president. But what they don't want to do is talk about his record of success because he's delivered for the American people. The promises he's made is what he's kept. And if you look at every metric, people are better off today than they were 3 years ago when he took office. The stock market is on fire again. Our economy is growing. People are back to work. We've got a strong military. He's going to secure our border. So if you want to beat Donald Trump, come out with a plan that is better than what Donald Trump has done the last 3 years. I don't see it, but Pete's message is probably the right one for the Democrats. Stop attacking Donald Trump and go find something positive that you can actually do for the country.
And you know, Corey, in the end, I don't know that any of them have the energy that Donald Trump has or can take the blows and the incoming that he has. So I think that on that level, there is no comparison. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.